He invited his poor black ex to his wedding to disgrace her, but she came in a private jet with quadruplets. Devon wanted to disgrace his ex-wife by inviting her to his lavish wedding. He expected her to arrive defeated, confirming to everyone that she had been the problem in their failed marriage. But when Simone descended from a private jet with 4 beautiful children holding the hands of their nannies, the entire venue fell silent. The same woman he once branded as barren now had quadruplets. And that was just the beginning of his reckoning. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're watching from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Now let's continue. In the glittering world of tech empires and high society, a man named Devon Hartfield was a successful entrepreneur in his mid-30s, the founder of Hartfield Technologies. Everyone in business circles knew him as a man who valued power, status, and control above all else. Devon wore custom-tailored suits, drove cars that cost more than most people's homes, and carried himself with the confidence of someone who believed the world existed to serve him. He was ambitious, calculating, and obsessed with maintaining his image as the perfect success story. But behind the penthouse apartment, behind the magazine covers and the corporate achievements, there was one part of his life that filled him with rage every single day. His wife, Simone, had given him no children. Simone was a graceful and soft-spoken woman. She was beautiful, with rich brown skin and gentle eyes that seemed to carry an ocean of unspoken sadness. She had married Devon out of genuine love, not for his growing fortune or his social connections, and for 8 years she stood faithfully by his side through late nights, stressful business deals, and family pressures. But those 8 years became years of quiet torment, because every month brought the same crushing disappointment. Every doctor's visit ended with the same devastating news: no pregnancy, no child. One evening, the storm that had been building in their marriage for years finally erupted. The penthouse was eerily quiet, the city lights twinkling through the windows like distant, uncaring stars. The air felt heavy, suffocating. Simone sat on the edge of their bed, her hands trembling in her lap, already knowing what was coming. Devon entered the bedroom, loosening his silk tie with sharp, angry movements, his face twisted with resentment. 8 years, Simone, Devon said coldly, tossing his briefcase onto the chair. 8 years of waiting, and still nothing. Do you have any idea what this has done to my reputation, to my family's expectations? Simone lifted her eyes slowly, her voice barely above a whisper. Devon, we've been trying everything. I've done every treatment, every procedure. Maybe we should try a different specialist. Maybe there's still hope. Hope, Devon laughed, the sound sharp and cruel. Hope is what weak people cling to when they can't face reality. I'm tired of hope. My mother asks me constantly when I'm going to give her grandchildren. My business partners make jokes about my empty house. Do you know how that feels? To be pitied? To be mocked? Tears filled Simone's eyes. Please don't talk like this. I'm your wife. We made promises to each other. We said through sickness and health, through better or worse. Why are you treating me like I'm your enemy? Devon's voice rose, echoing off the walls. Because you are my enemy. What good is a wife who can't fulfill the most basic purpose of marriage? You live in my home, spend my money, wear the clothes I buy, and you can't give me one child. Not even one. Simone, you're a failure. You've made me a failure. Simone's whole body shook as she tried to respond. Don't call me that. I have prayed every single night. I have cried until I had no tears left. I've let doctors examine me, poke me, test me over and over. Do you think I'm happy like this? Do you think this doesn't break my heart too? Devon, I'm suffering just as much as you are. Devon turned away. Pacing the room like a trapped animal, his anger seemed to feed on itself, growing hotter with every passing second. I don't want to hear about your suffering anymore. I've wasted enough time. Tomorrow morning I'm meeting with my lawyers. This marriage is over. Simone gasped, the words hitting her like a physical blow. Divorce? You would divorce me after everything we've been through? After I supported you when you were building your company from nothing? After I gave up my career, my dreams, to be the wife you needed? Devon spun around, his eyes cold and empty. Love doesn't produce heirs. My mother was right from the beginning. I never should have married you. I need a wife who can actually give me children, not someone who just takes up space in my life. By tomorrow evening, Simone, I want you gone. Simone fell to her knees, reaching for him desperately. Devon, please, don't do this. We can try again. We can adopt. We can do anything you want. Just don't throw away 8 years like they meant nothing. Devon jerked away from her touch as if it burned him. They did mean nothing. You mean nothing to me now. You're the problem, and I'm done being tied to you. The argument echoed through the penthouse. Staff members who worked for them pretended not to hear, but everyone knew. Everyone always knew. Simone's sobs filled the space between his cruel words as she tried one final time. Devon, look at me. Really look at me. I'm the woman who stood beside you at every business dinner, who celebrated every success with you, who held you when your father died. I've given you everything I have. Don't discard me like I'm trash. But Devon's heart had turned to stone. He pulled out his phone and made a call right in front of her, not even bothering to hide his plans. Richard? Yes, it's Devon. I need you to prepare divorce papers immediately. I want this done as quickly as possible. Yes, tomorrow works perfectly. Simone froze, staring at him in complete disbelief. You already planned this? You called your lawyer? Devon, how long have you been planning to destroy me? Devon looked down at her with pure disdain. Simone, you destroyed yourself by being inadequate. I'm simply moving on with my life. If you have any dignity left, pack your things tonight. I don't want to see you here in the morning. Simone rose slowly, her legs barely supporting her weight. She walked to the closet and began pulling out her clothes with shaking hands, folding them into the small suitcase she had once used for their honeymoon. Every item she touched carried a memory. Anniversaries, holidays, quiet Sunday mornings. But now those memories felt like lies, like scenes from someone else's life. As she packed, Devon stood by the window, arms crossed, watching the city below. Not once did he turn to stop her. Not once did his expression soften. Not once did he remember the woman he had promised to love forever. Simone finally zipped her suitcase, tears streaming down her face unchecked. She turned to face him one last time, her voice breaking, but her words clear. Devon, you will regret this. One day, the truth will come out. One day, you'll understand exactly what you've done and who you've lost. Devon said nothing. He simply looked away, as if she had already disappeared from his life. With slow, painful steps, Simone walked out of the bedroom. Her footsteps echoed on the marble floors she had once loved. The home that had been hers for 8 years now felt like a mausoleum. She passed by framed photos of happier times, each one now a reminder of everything she was losing. She opened the front door, and the cool night air rushed in, carrying the sounds of the city that never stopped moving. She paused at the threshold, looking back one final time at the penthouse that had been her prison and her home. Then she whispered to herself, her voice steady despite her tears. I may be leaving with nothing but this suitcase, but I will not stay broken. My story is not over. God will fight for me." And with that quiet vow, Simone stepped into the hallway, pulling her suitcase behind her. The door closed with a soft click that sounded like the end of one chapter and the terrifying, uncertain beginning of another. But that was 2 years ago. Now, Devon Hartfield sat in his luxurious penthouse once again. But this time the atmosphere was different. Excitement filled the air. Wedding invitations were spread across the glass dining table like expensive playing cards. Beside him sat Vanessa Laurent, a stunning supermodel whose face graced fashion magazines worldwide. Her long legs were crossed elegantly, her manicured finger tapping one invitation in particular. "Are you sure about this one?" Vanessa asked, holding up the cream envelope addressed in Devon's own handwriting. Devon reached over and took it from her hands, studying the name he had written with deliberate care. Simone Hartfield. He had kept her married name on the envelope, a small act of ownership that pleased him immensely. "Absolutely sure," Devon replied, a cruel smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "It's about closure, moving forward gracefully." Vanessa raised one perfectly sculpted eyebrow. "Inviting your ex-wife to our wedding is graceful?" "It shows I've moved on completely," Devon said smoothly. "That I harbor no ill will. It's the mature thing to do." But inside his mind, Devon's thoughts were far less noble. He imagined Simone receiving the invitation in whatever small apartment she was living in now. He pictured her opening it with trembling hands, seeing his success, his beautiful new bride, the lavish venue. He wanted her to feel every ounce of the inadequacy he had once accused her of. He wanted 300 guests to see her walk in alone, confirmation that she had been the defective one all along. This wedding would be his final victory, his public vindication. The next morning, Devon personally walked to the mailbox to send the invitation. He could have had his assistant do it, but this moment was too satisfying to delegate. As he dropped the envelope into the slot, he imagined Simone's face when she opened it. Would she cry? Would she throw it away in anger? Or would she come, unable to resist one last glimpse of the life she had lost? The wedding was set for Riverside Gardens Estate, a breathtaking venue known for hosting the weddings of celebrities and tech moguls. The estate featured sprawling gardens, a grand ballroom, and even a private helipad for VIP guests who preferred to arrive by helicopter. Devon had spared no expense. Everything had to be perfect. Everything had to scream success. 3 days later, across town in a modest but tidy apartment, Simone stood by her mailbox. Her hands were full of bills and advertisements when she noticed the cream envelope. The return address made her freeze. Hartfield Technologies. Her maiden name, Carter, was nowhere to be seen. He had addressed it to Simone Hartfield, as if she still belonged to him somehow. With shaking hands, she opened the envelope. The invitation was elegant, expensive, everything Devon would choose. Her eyes scanned the words. "Devon Hartfield and Vanessa Laurent request the honor of your presence." The date, the venue, the careful script that spelled out his new beginning and her old ending. Simone sank onto her couch, the invitation trembling in her grip. For a moment, the old pain threatened to overwhelm her. The memories of that terrible night rushed back. His cruel words, his cold dismissal, the way he had watched her pack without a single word of comfort. But then something else stirred inside her. Something stronger than pain. Something that had been growing quietly over the past 2 years. She looked around her small apartment. It wasn't the penthouse, but it was hers, truly hers. On the wall hung photos of her success, her journey, her truth. And in the bedroom down the hall, 4 small beds waited for 4 beautiful reasons why Devon's cruelty had not destroyed her. Simone set the invitation on the coffee table and spoke quietly to herself, her voice steady and certain. He wants to see me broken. But broken is not what I am anymore. 6 months after that devastating night, Simone's life looked nothing like the one she had left behind. Gone were the designer clothes and luxury cars. Gone were the catered dinners and staff who cleaned her home. In their place was something Devon would have called failure, but what Simone was learning to call survival. She worked 3 jobs to make ends meet. Monday through Friday, she did temp work at various offices, answering phones and filing documents. On weekends, she helped cater events, the irony not lost on her that she now served food at the kind of parties she used to attend. Late at night, hunched over her laptop, she took on freelance projects, editing presentations and managing social media accounts for small businesses. Every dollar counted, every shift mattered. Her best friend Keisha, a nurse at Memorial Hospital, watched this grueling schedule with growing concern. One evening, after Simone had fallen asleep on her couch still wearing her catering uniform, Keisha shook her awake gently. "Simone, we need to talk," Keisha said, her voice firm but kind. "When was the last time you saw a doctor? A real checkup, not just running yourself into the ground?" Simone rubbed her eyes, exhausted. "I'm fine, Keisha. I just need to work harder." "No, you need answers," Keisha insisted. "All those years Devon blamed you for not having children, but did you ever get properly tested? Really tested, by someone who wasn't connected to his family or his money?" The question hung in the air. Simone realized with startling clarity that the answer was no. Every doctor she had seen during her marriage had been recommended by Patricia Hartfield, Devon's mother. Every test had been filtered through the lens of their assumptions. "Come to my hospital," Keisha continued. "I know a fertility specialist, Dr. Elijah Cross. He's brilliant, kind, and he doesn't know Devon from anyone. Let him run real tests. You deserve to know the truth." 2 weeks later, Simone sat in Dr. Elijah Cross's office, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. The clinic was small but spotlessly clean, with warm lighting that felt comforting rather than clinical. Dr. Cross was a tall man in his late 30s with gentle eyes and a calm demeanor that immediately put her at ease. "Ms. Carter," he said, using her maiden name as she had requested. "Keisha told me a bit about your situation. I want you to know that whatever we find, you're in a judgment-free space here. My job is to give you facts, not opinions." Over the next 2 weeks, Simone underwent every test imaginable. Blood work, ultrasounds, hormone panels, ovarian reserve testing. Each appointment felt like peeling back layers of shame she had carried for so long. When the results came in, Dr. Cross called her back to his office. Simone's heart pounded as she sat across from him, preparing herself for confirmation of what Devon had always said. Dr. Cross opened her file, looked at her with kind eyes, and spoke words that would change everything. "Ms. Carter, there is absolutely nothing wrong with you. Your reproductive system is perfectly healthy. Your hormone levels are excellent. Your ovarian reserve is strong. You are fully capable of conceiving and carrying children." Simone stared at him, unable to process what she was hearing. "What? But that's impossible. 8 years. 8 years of trying and nothing." "Which suggests the issue was never with you," Dr. Cross said gently but firmly. "In cases where a couple cannot conceive, the problem lies with the male partner approximately 40 to 50% of the time. Did your husband ever undergo testing?" The question hit Simone like a wave. She remembered Devon's refusal, his anger whenever she suggested it. "Real men don't have those problems," he had said, his voice dripping with contempt at the very suggestion. "No," Simone whispered. He refused. He said it was insulting to even ask. Dr. Cross nodded slowly, a flash of anger crossing his professional demeanor. I see this more often than you'd think. Men who refuse testing, then blame their partners to protect their own egos. Ms. Carter, based on these results, I would bet considerable money that if your ex-husband were tested, we'd find significant fertility issues. Something inside Simone shattered, not in a bad way, but like a dam finally breaking after years of pressure. 8 years of believing she was broken, 8 years of shame, of prayers whispered in desperation, of feeling like a failure, and it had all been a lie. She began to cry, not quiet tears, but deep, wrenching sobs that came from a place she had kept locked away. Dr. Cross quietly handed her tissues and waited, letting her release years of undeserved guilt. I'm sorry, she finally managed. All this time. You have nothing to apologize for, Dr. Cross said. Nothing at all. What was done to you was cruel and unfair, but now you know the truth. You are not broken. You never were. Over the following months, Simone returned for follow-up appointments. What began as a doctor-patient relationship slowly evolved into something warmer. Dr. Cross, she learned, preferred to be called Elijah outside of formal settings. During one visit, when she thanked him for his kindness, he shared his own story. I was married young, Elijah said, his voice carrying old pain. My wife, Sarah, died in a car accident 5 years ago. We had been trying for children, working through my own fertility challenges from a childhood illness. After she died, I threw myself into this work. Helping others build families became my way of healing. Simone saw her own pain reflected in his eyes. They began talking beyond medical matters, sharing coffee after appointments, discussing books and dreams, and the hard work of rebuilding after loss. Meanwhile, Simone had taken a leap of faith. Using her old skills from coordinating tech conferences, she started a small consulting business helping event planners with logistics and client management. It started with 1 client, then 2, then 5. Word of mouth spread. Her attention to detail and genuine care for each event earned her a reputation. Keisha noticed the change in her friend. Not just the growing business success, but the way Simone's face lit up when she mentioned Dr. Cross. You like him, Keisha said one evening, not as a question, but as a statement of fact. Simone blushed. He's been very kind. He looks at you like you're the sun, Simone, and you look at him the same way. Don't let fear stop you from being happy again. 3 months after that first appointment, Elijah asked Simone to dinner, not as a doctor, but as a man who had found someone special. I know this might be unexpected, he said, his usual confidence slightly shaken, but I'd like to take you to dinner, as more than just your doctor, if you're interested. Simone's heart raced, fear and hope warring inside her. But when she looked at Elijah's kind eyes, she remembered Dr. Cross's words from months ago. You are not broken. You never were. I'd like that, she said softly. I'd like that very much. Their courtship unfolded slowly over the next 18 months, built on foundations of honesty and patience. They took long walks through the city parks. They cooked dinner together in Simone's small apartment. They talked about everything, their pasts, their pain, their hopes for the future. Elijah never pushed her, never demanded more than she was ready to give. One evening, as they sat watching the sunset from a quiet bench, Simone finally told him everything. Every cruel word Devon had spoken, every humiliation she had endured. Every night she had cried herself to sleep believing she was worthless. Elijah listened, his jaw tightening with quiet anger. When she finished, he took her hands in his. "That man was a fool," he said, his voice steady but intense. "He had a treasure and treated it like garbage, but his loss is my blessing, if you'll have me." 6 months later, Elijah proposed with words that healed something deep in Simone's soul. "Let me show you what real love looks like. Not love based on what you can give me, but love based on who you are. Marry me, Simone." Their wedding was small and intimate, held in a garden with only close friends present. Keisha served as maid of honor, crying tears of joy as she watched her friend marry a man who truly deserved her. There was no spectacle, no society photographers, no business partners to impress, just two people who had found each other in the aftermath of pain, choosing to build something beautiful together. Under Elijah's emotional support, Simone's business flourished. She landed a major contract coordinating a series of tech conferences, the same type of events where she had once met Devon. But this time, she was the one in control, the one calling the shots, the one respected for her expertise. When they decided to try for children, Elijah was honest about his own limitations. "I had a severe illness as a child that affected my fertility," he explained. "We'll need to use assisted reproductive technology, possibly with donor material. But if you're willing, I want to build a family with you." Simone looked at the man who had shown her what real partnership meant and nodded. "Let's do it together." The IVF procedure was successful beyond their wildest dreams. When the doctor called with results, his voice carried astonishment. "Congratulations! You're pregnant with quadruplets. 4 healthy embryos." Simone screamed with joy. Elijah fell to his knees, overwhelmed. 4 children, 4 miracles, 4 living pieces of proof that she had never been the problem. The pregnancy was challenging. Carrying quadruplets pushed her body to its limits. But Elijah was there every step of the way, attending every appointment, building a nursery with his own hands, hiring help for when the babies arrived, reading every book on multiple births he could find. Now, in her 3rd trimester, Simone sat in the nursery they had created together. Her hand rested on her swollen belly, feeling 4 distinct patterns of movement. Zara kicked near her ribs. Zion tumbled near her hip. Layla pressed against her side. Levi stretched near her belly button. Each movement was a declaration. "You are not barren. You were never broken. This is your truth." Elijah entered the room, carrying her favorite tea. He knelt beside her chair, placing his hand over hers on her belly. "How are my 5 favorite people?" he asked, his voice full of wonder. Simone looked at him, this man who had helped her rise from the ashes of her old life. "We're perfect," she said. "We're finally, completely perfect." For the first time in years, Simone felt true peace. The shame was gone. The fear was gone. In their place was something Devon's money could never buy. Genuine love, honest partnership, and the unshakable knowledge of her own worth. She had no idea that in a few months a cream envelope would arrive, carrying Devon's invitation to witness his new happiness. She had no idea that his attempt to humiliate her would become the stage for her greatest triumph. All she knew in this moment was that she had survived, rebuilt, and was about to become the mother Devon had sworn she could never be. The past was behind her. The future was growing inside her. And somewhere across town, Devon Hartfield was about to learn that the woman he had thrown away was worth far more than he had ever imagined. The delivery room erupted in a symphony of newborn cries. First came Zara, screaming her arrival with fierce determination at 6:47 a.m. 2 minutes later, Zion followed, his cries softer but steady. Layla entered the world at 6:52 a.m. with a wail that could wake the entire hospital. Finally, at 6:55 a.m., Levi arrived quietly, as if observing his siblings before deciding to join them. 4 healthy babies, the lead doctor announced, her voice filled with wonder. "Congratulations." Simone lay exhausted on the hospital bed, tears streaming down her face. Not tears of pain, but of overwhelming joy. Elijah stood beside her, his face wet with his own tears, laughing and crying at the same time. The nurses worked efficiently, cleaning and weighing each baby before placing them one by one on Simone's chest. "I'm not barren," Simone whispered, her voice breaking. "I'm not broken." "You never were," Elijah said, kissing her forehead. "You never were." Even in those first hours, each baby showed distinct personalities. Zara, the firstborn, had alert eyes that seemed to take in everything around her. She rarely cried without reason, and when she did, it was loud and commanding, as if she knew she needed to be heard over her siblings. Zion was the observer, content to watch and listen, his dark eyes following movement with quiet curiosity. Layla was the social one, making small noises even as a newborn, as if already trying to communicate with her family. Levi was the peaceful one, sleeping more than the others. But when awake, he smiled easily, bringing calm to chaotic moments. The first months were a blur of sleepless nights and endless feedings. 4 babies meant 4 different feeding schedules, 4 different sleep patterns, 4 different needs, all demanding attention simultaneously. Simone and Elijah moved through those early days like soldiers in a loving war, operating on 2 hours of sleep and pure determination. Elijah took a full 3 months of paternity leave from his practice, something his partners initially questioned, but he refused to negotiate. "My family needs me," he said simply. "Everything else can wait." He proved himself in ways that made Simone fall in love with him all over again. At 3 a.m., when Zara and Layla both woke crying, Elijah would scoop up one while Simone took the other, both of them pacing the nursery in synchronized exhaustion. He learned to change diapers with impressive speed, to prepare bottles with one hand while burping a baby with the other, to function on coffee and love alone. Keisha became their lifeline, showing up with groceries and prepared meals, organizing a rotation of friends who came to help. Other mothers from Simone's prenatal support group formed an unofficial support network, sharing advice, baby clothes, and much-needed adult conversation during the long, isolating days. Simone's business had to adapt. She couldn't attend in-person meetings or work on-site at events anymore, not with 4 infants at home. But necessity bred innovation. She pivoted to remote consulting, offering her expertise through video calls and detailed digital presentations. Her clients, mostly understanding professionals themselves, appreciated her flexibility and skill. 6 months after the babies were born, something unexpected happened. A former colleague from her event coordination days reached out with an opportunity. A major tech company needed someone to plan their annual conference, a 3-day event with keynote speakers, breakout sessions, and networking dinners. The irony wasn't lost on Simone. Tech conferences were where she had met Devon, where she had once worked before giving up her career for his. "I can do this," she told Elijah, though doubt crept into her voice. "But with the babies—" "We'll make it work," Elijah assured her. "I'm back at the practice part-time now. We have the nannies during the day. Simone, this is your field. Take the contract." She did, and she excelled. Working late nights after the babies slept, collaborating with vendors through video calls during nap times, Simone coordinated every detail of the conference with the precision that had once made her one of the best in the business. The event was a spectacular success, earning her glowing reviews and 3 more contract offers within a month. Her business grew steadily. What had started as small-scale event consulting evolved into a boutique firm specializing in high-end corporate events. Companies valued her attention to detail, her ability to anticipate problems, and her genuine investment in making each event memorable. The money improved. They moved from the modest apartment to a comfortable house with a backyard, space for the children to grow. The baby's first birthday party filled that backyard with balloons, laughter, and friends who had become family. 4 small cakes sat on the picnic table, each decorated with a different color for each child. Zara smashed her purple cake with focused intensity. Zion carefully poked his blue cake with one finger, studying it before tasting. Layla covered herself head to toe in pink frosting, laughing hysterically. Levi ate his yellow cake methodically, the neatest of the 4. Keisha pulled Simone aside during the party, hugging her tightly. "Look at you," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "2 years ago, you were sleeping on my couch thinking your life was over. Now look, 4 beautiful babies, a thriving business, a husband who adores you. Girl, you didn't just survive, you conquered." Simone looked around at her life, at the joy she had built from the ruins of her marriage to Devon, and felt a fierce pride she had never known before. She wasn't the same woman who had been thrown out of that penthouse. She was stronger, wiser, and infinitely more certain of her own worth. By the time the children turned 18 months old, the house was pure, beautiful chaos. Zara had learned to walk first, and now led her siblings on adventures through the house, organizing their toys with surprising efficiency. Zion spoke in full sentences earlier than the others, narrating everything he saw with thoughtful commentary. Layla was the social butterfly, hugging everyone she met, making friends at the playground with fearless enthusiasm. Levi remained the peaceful one, content to sit with his books, though he could run faster than any of his siblings when motivated. Simone had transformed completely. Gone was the uncertain, broken woman who had questioned her own value. In her place stood a confident mother who managed 4 toddlers with grace, a successful businesswoman who commanded respect in her field, and a wife in a partnership built on genuine love and mutual support. It was a Tuesday afternoon when the cream envelope arrived. Simone was in her home office reviewing proposals for an upcoming pharmaceutical conference while the nanny supervised the children's afternoon snack. She heard the mail slot click and walked to the front door, shuffling through the usual bills and advertisements. Then she saw it. The return address made her blood run cold. Hartfield Technologies. Her hands began to tremble as she opened the envelope, though part of her already knew what she would find. The invitation was exactly what Devon would choose. Elegant, expensive, designed to impress. His name and Vanessa Laurent's were embossed in gold. Riverside Gardens Estate, black tie, the wedding of the season, no doubt. For a moment, Simone was back in that penthouse, hearing his voice call her worthless, watching him turn away as she packed her life into a suitcase. The old pain surged up, sharp and unexpected. Her breathing quickened, her vision blurred with tears. "Simone?" Elijah's voice came from behind her. He had come home early, as he often did on Tuesdays, to spend time with the children. "What's wrong?" She couldn't speak. She just handed him the invitation. Elijah read it, his jaw tightening. When he looked up, his eyes were dark with protective anger. "He invited you to his wedding? After everything he did to you?" "He wants to humiliate me," Simone whispered, sinking onto the couch. "He thinks I'm still that broken woman he threw away. He wants everyone to see me defeated." Elijah sat beside her, pulling her close. "Then don't go. You don't owe him anything. Not your presence, not your attention. Nothing." "I know," Simone said, wiping her tears. "But part of me." "Part of you wants him to see," Elijah finished gently. "Wants him to know he was wrong about you." Simone nodded, fresh tears falling. From the kitchen she could hear her children's voices. Zara directing her siblings, Zion asking questions, Layla singing, Levi laughing. The sounds of the life she had built, the family Devon had sworn she could never have. "I don't know what to do," she admitted. "If I ignore it, he wins. He gets to keep believing his lies. But if I go—" "If you go, you face him," Elijah said. "You show him the truth. But Simone, you need to be sure. Not for him, but for yourself. Will going bring you peace, or just open old wounds?" They sat in silence for a long moment. Simone thought about the woman she had been, crying herself to sleep in that tiny studio apartment, believing she was defective. She thought about the woman she was now, strong and whole and surrounded by love. Finally, she looked at Elijah, her decision crystallizing with absolute clarity. "I'm going," she said, her voice steady. "Not because he matters, not because I need his validation, but because I need to close this door myself. I need to stand in front of him whole and happy and show him that his cruelty didn't destroy me. I survived him. I thrived without him." Elijah studied her face, then nodded slowly. "Then we'll do this right. You won't walk in there defeated. You'll walk in there victorious." "We?" Simone asked. "I'm not letting you face him alone," Elijah said firmly. "And neither are Zara, Zion, Layla, and Levi. If you're going to close this door, let's close it in a way he'll never forget." Simone looked at her husband, at the man who had shown her what real love looked like, and felt something shift inside her. Not fear anymore, but determination. Devon wanted to parade his success in front of his broken ex-wife. Instead, he was about to face the woman who had risen from the ashes he left behind, stronger and more successful than he could have imagined. "All right," she said, a small smile forming through her tears. "Let's show him exactly what he threw away." 3 weeks stretched before Simone like a countdown to something she couldn't quite name. Not revenge, though the word tempted her. Not vindication, though that came close. Perhaps it was simply closure, the final punctuation mark on a chapter of her life that had refused to end cleanly. "You're really doing this," Keisha said, sitting on Simone's bed as her friend sorted through her closet. It wasn't a question. "I'm really doing this," Simone confirmed, pulling out dress after dress and rejecting each one. Too subdued, too flashy, too reminiscent of the woman she used to be. Keisha leaned forward, her eyes sparkling with the excitement Simone couldn't quite feel yet. "Then let's do it right. Let's show him exactly what he lost." They went shopping the next day, leaving Elijah with the children and hitting the boutiques downtown. Simone tried on a dozen dresses before she found it. The emerald silk seemed to glow from within, the color rich and deep. It flowed like water, elegant without being ostentatious, expensive without screaming for attention. "That's the one," Keisha breathed. "Girl, you look like royalty." Simone stared at her reflection. The woman looking back wasn't the broken divorcee who had left Devon's penthouse with a single suitcase. This woman was strong, successful, and radiating quiet confidence. "It symbolizes renewal," Simone said softly. "Growth. New beginnings." "It symbolizes, look what you threw away, fool," Keisha corrected with a grin. Back home, Simone began making arrangements. Initially, she had planned to hire a babysitter to attend the wedding alone, as Devon probably expected. But as she watched her children playing in the living room, Zara organizing a tower of blocks while her siblings watched in fascination, something shifted in her mind. "Elijah?" she called to her husband, who was reading in his office. He appeared in the doorway. "What is it?" "I want to bring them," Simone said, gesturing to the children. "All of them. I want Devon to see them. I want everyone to see them." Elijah studied her face carefully. "Are you sure? That's a bold statement." They're not a statement, Simone said firmly. They're the truth. For 8 years, Devon told me I was the problem. These 4 beautiful souls are proof that I never was. Why should I hide them? Why should I protect his lies? A slow smile spread across Elijah's face. Then let's make sure they look absolutely perfect. Over the next week, preparations intensified. Simone coordinated with her nanny team, professional childcare providers who had been with the family since the babies were born. She ordered custom cream-colored outfits for the children, soft fabrics that would photograph beautifully and symbolize purity and new beginnings. Transportation became the next consideration. Simone had planned to drive herself, but one of her wealthiest clients, a tech CEO whose company merger she had recently coordinated, offered something unexpected. "I heard about your situation," he said during a phone call about an upcoming event. "My private jet is available that weekend. Consider it a thank you for the brilliant work you did on our merger celebration." Simone hesitated. Arriving by private jet felt almost theatrical, too much like the revenge fantasy she insisted this wasn't. But another part of her, the part that had been humiliated and dismissed, whispered, "Let him see. Let them all see." "I accept," she said. "Thank you." As the days passed, Simone's anxiety grew. She would wake at 3 a.m., her heart racing, hearing Devon's voice in her head. "You're worthless. You're barren. You're nothing." The old wounds hadn't healed as completely as she had thought. Some scars ran deeper than success could reach. One night she woke from a nightmare where she had arrived at the wedding only to have the children disappear, leaving her standing alone while Devon laughed. She sat up in bed, breathing hard, tears on her face. Elijah stirred beside her. "Another nightmare?" Simone nodded, unable to speak. He pulled her close, his warmth anchoring her to reality. "You don't have to do this," he said gently. "We can ignore the invitation. We can stay home with our children, eat ice cream, and forget Devon Hartfield exists." "But he would win," Simone whispered. "He would get to keep believing his lies." "He lost the moment he threw you away," Elijah said. "You know that, right? He lost, and he doesn't even know it yet. This wedding, this show of his, it's all just noise. You've already won." Simone let his words sink in, let them quiet the anxious voice in her head. "Then why does it still hurt?" "Because healing isn't linear," Elijah said. "Because 8 years of emotional abuse doesn't disappear just because you've built a beautiful life. But Simone, look at what you've built. Look at our children. Look at your business. Look at this family we've created. That's real. His opinion never was." The next morning, Simone made final arrangements with military precision. She confirmed the jet booking, verified the ground transportation from the airfield to the venue, briefed the nannies on the schedule, and coordinated timing down to the minute. If she was going to do this, she would do it perfectly. She took the children to a photographer friend for portraits. The 4 of them in their cream outfits looked like something from a magazine, their brown skin glowing against the soft fabric, their faces bright with innocent joy. Zara's serious expression, Zion's thoughtful gaze, Layla's brilliant smile, Levi's peaceful contentment, each one a miracle, each one a declaration. "These are beautiful," the photographer said, showing Simone the images. "Your family is absolutely beautiful." "They are," Simone agreed, feeling fierce pride swell in her chest. The week before the wedding, she had her final dress fitting, got her hair styled, and worked with a makeup artist to perfect a look that was elegant but natural. She wanted to look like herself, not like she was trying too hard. She wanted to radiate the confidence of someone who had nothing to prove but everything to show. Keisha came over the night before the wedding, finding Simone sitting in the nursery long after the children had fallen asleep. She was watching them sleep, one hand resting on Zara's crib. "Can't sleep?" Keisha asked softly. "I keep thinking about tomorrow," Simone admitted. "What if I freeze? What if seeing him brings back all the old feelings? What if I cry?" "Then you cry," Keisha said simply. "You're human, Simone. You're allowed to feel things. But remember this. You're not the woman he threw away anymore. You're the woman who survived him, who built an empire from nothing, who has 4 children he said you could never have. If you cry tomorrow, there'll be tears of strength, not weakness." Simone turned to look at her best friend. "When did you get so wise?" "I've always been wise," Keisha grinned. "You were just too stressed to notice." That night, Simone barely slept. She lay awake, staring at the ceiling, playing through scenarios in her mind. What would she say if Devon approached her? How would she react if he was cruel again? What if Vanessa confronted her? What if the whole thing was a disaster? But as dawn broke and golden light filtered through the curtains, Simone felt something shift. She got out of bed, walked to the mirror, and looked at herself. Really looked. The woman staring back had survived 8 years of emotional abuse, a devastating divorce, months of poverty and struggle, and the complete rebuilding of her entire life. That woman was not breakable anymore. Morning arrived with organized chaos. Elijah helped dress the children while Simone got ready. The nanny team arrived at 8 a.m., professional and prepared. Hair and makeup artists came to the house, transforming Simone into the vision she had planned. When she finally put on the emerald dress, Elijah stopped in the doorway of their bedroom, speechless. "Too much?" Simone asked, suddenly uncertain. "You're breathtaking," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Simone, you are absolutely breathtaking. Devon Hartfield is going to realize he threw away a diamond to chase after glass." At the airport, the private jet waited, sleek and powerful on the tarmac. The children were excited by the plane, pointing and chattering. Simone felt her heart hammering as they boarded, the reality of what she was about to do finally hitting her. As they settled into the luxurious seats, Elijah took her hand. "Last chance to change your mind," he said. "We can turn this plane around right now." Simone looked at her children, at the man who loved her unconditionally, at the life she had built from ruins. She thought about the woman she used to be and the woman she had become. She thought about Devon's cruel words and her own hard-won truth. "No," she said, her voice steady and certain. "I'm going. Not because he matters, but because I need to close this door myself. I need to stand in front of him and show him that his cruelty didn't define me. I survived. I thrived. And he needs to see that." Elijah squeezed her hand. "Then let's show him what real strength looks like." The jet engines roared to life. Simone closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and felt the plane lift off. There was no turning back now. Devon's perfect day was about to become something very different, and for the first time in years, Simone felt completely ready to face the man who had once tried to break her. The past was behind her. The truth was beside her. And ahead, through the clouds, lay the moment of reckoning she had earned through every tear, every struggle, every small victory on her journey from broken to whole. "Let's do this," she whispered as the plane climbed higher, carrying her toward the vindication she hadn't known she needed until now. The private jet touched down on the small airfield adjacent to Riverside Gardens estate, with barely a tremor. Through the window, Simone could see the sprawling venue in the distance, white tents glowing in the afternoon sun, Luxury cars lined up like soldiers along the curved driveway. Her heart hammered against her ribs, but her face remained calm. "We're here, love," Elijah said softly, squeezing her hand. He had insisted on coming, though he would stay back with the staff, giving Simone her moment. "Remember, you've already won. This is just showing him the scoreboard." Simone nodded, adjusting the emerald silk dress that flowed like water over her post-pregnancy figure. The color had been deliberate. Emerald for renewal, for growth, for precious things that only increase in value over time. Her hair was styled in elegant waves, her makeup subtle but flawless. She looked like success, like confidence, like everything Devon had once dismissed. The jet door opened, and the ground crew rolled the stairs into place. Simone stood, smoothing her dress. Behind her, 3 professional nannies prepared the children. Zara wore a cream dress with tiny pearls. Zion was dressed in a miniature suit that made him look impossibly grown up. Layla's dress matched her sister's, and Levi wore the same suit as his brother. They looked like royalty, these 4 children who were never supposed to exist. "Ready, babies?" Simone asked, lifting Zara into her arms. "Where going, Mama?" Zara asked, her bright eyes curious. "To show someone that Mama is strong," Simone replied, kissing her daughter's forehead. A convoy of luxury vehicles waited on the tarmac. The client who had loaned Simone his private jet had also arranged the transportation. 3 black SUVs with tinted windows, the kind that screamed wealth and importance. The nannies settled into the first vehicle with Zion, Layla, and Levi. Simone and Zara took the second. Elijah followed in the third. As they approached the estate, Simone could see the scale of Devon's production. Riverside Gardens was breathtaking, with manicured lawns, towering oak trees, and a glass-walled pavilion overlooking a lake. The helipad sat slightly elevated, visible from the main ceremony area. Of course, Devon had chosen a venue with a helipad. Of course, he wanted to showcase every VIP arrival. Inside the ceremony space, Devon stood at the altar trying to appear relaxed, but his fingers kept adjusting his tie. The venue was a masterpiece of white roses, crystal chandeliers hanging from tent peaks, and chairs covered in ivory silk. 300 guests filled the seats, the crème de la crème of tech industry leaders, fashion icons, and society influencers. Vanessa stood beside him in a wedding gown that had cost more than most people's cars. The dress was a work of art, custom designed with intricate beading and a train that stretched 10 feet behind her. She was objectively stunning, her model-perfect features enhanced by professional makeup, her blonde hair swept into an elaborate updo. "You keep checking your watch," Vanessa whispered, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "Expecting someone?" Devon forced a laugh. "Just eager to make you my wife." But he was watching the entrance, wondering if Simone would actually show. Would she come alone, dressed in something cheap, confirmation of her decline? Would she cry? Would she leave early, unable to bear witnessing his triumph? The anticipation was delicious. In the front row, Patricia Hartfield held court with the guests around her. At 62, she wore her wealth like armor. Designer suit, statement jewelry, perfect hair. She was already whispering to the woman beside her, loud enough to be overheard. "I told Devon years ago that girl wasn't right for him," Patricia said, her voice carrying. "Some women just aren't built for the responsibilities of a proper marriage. Of course, he's found the perfect match now." The guests murmured agreement, not because they believed her, but because Patricia Hartfield was not someone you contradicted. The officiant, a distinguished man in his 60s, checked his watch. "We should begin," he said quietly to Devon. Devon nodded, taking his position. The string quartet began playing, signaling the processional was about to start. Vanessa's bridesmaids began their walk down the aisle. Everything was perfect. Everything was going according to plan. Then, cutting through the music, came a sound that made everyone pause. The distant thrum of helicopter blades growing louder. Heads turned. Guests whispered. Devon frowned, glancing at the sky. He had arranged for some VIP guests to arrive by helicopter earlier, but everyone was already seated. Who was arriving now? The sound grew louder, and then the sleek private jet came into view, approaching the helipad with elegant precision. It was smaller than a commercial jet, but unmistakably expensive, the kind of aircraft that belonged to people with serious wealth. "Who is that?" someone in the third row asked. The jet landed smoothly. The engines powered down. For a moment, nothing happened. 300 guests sat in suspended animation, watching the aircraft, the ceremony forgotten. Inside the jet, Simone took a deep breath. "This is it," she whispered to Zara. "Mama's going to be brave now." The door opened, the stairs extended, and Simone stepped out. The emerald dress caught the sunlight, shimmering like liquid gemstones. Her hair lifted slightly in the breeze. She held Zara on her hip with the natural grace of a mother who had carried 4 children. Behind her, the 3 nannies descended, each carrying a child. Zion looked around with his thoughtful gaze. Layla waved at no one in particular. Levi rested his head on his nanny's shoulder, observing everything quietly. The convoy of SUVs pulled up to escort them from the helipad to the ceremony. Simone settled Zara more securely on her hip and began walking. Her heels clicked on the stone pathway. The nannies followed in perfect formation, the children angelic in their cream outfits. The wedding photographer, positioned to capture the ceremony, instinctively turned his camera toward this unexpected arrival. His assistant did the same. Flash, flash, flash. The images captured would later be distributed across social media, though not in the way Devon had intended. As Simone approached the ceremony space, guests began turning in their seats. First a few, then a dozen, then everyone. The string quartet faltered, losing their place in the music. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Simone walked with her head high, her expression serene, as if she attended her ex-husband's weddings via private jet every weekend. The garden path led directly past the seated guests toward the third row where her assigned seat waited. She had checked the seating chart, had known exactly where Devon wanted her, close enough to see everything, far enough to be dismissed. The crowd parted instinctively as she approached, guests pulling their knees aside, creating a clear path. It was like watching the Red Sea split, except this miracle was powered by pure shock rather than divine intervention. At the altar, Devon felt his world tilt sideways. His hands went numb, his vision tunneled. That was Simone. That was definitely Simone, but transformed into someone he didn't recognize. The elegant dress, the confident walk, and those children. 4 children. 4 impossible, beautiful children. The color drained from his face, leaving him pale as his boutonniere. His eyes widened until they seemed to take up half his face. His body froze completely, as if someone had pressed pause on his entire existence. Vanessa noticed his reaction first. Following his gaze to see what had caused this transformation, her confusion turned to alarm as she registered the beautiful woman in emerald, the 4 children, and the way every guest was now staring. "Devon?" she whispered urgently. "Who is that?" Devon couldn't answer. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. The woman he had called Baron was walking through his wedding with quadruplets. The mathematical impossibility of it hit him like a physical blow. Quadruplets. Not 1 child, not twins, but 4 children at once. How? When? And more terrifyingly, why had everyone lied? In the front row, Patricia Hartfield made an audible gasping sound, her hand flying to her chest where her diamond necklace caught the light. Her face went through several expressions in rapid succession: shock, confusion, recognition, and finally, something that looked like fear. "Dear God," she breathed, just loud enough for those nearby to hear. "That's Simone." The whisper spread through the crowd like wildfire in dry grass. "Is that his ex-wife? Are those her children? I thought she couldn't have children. Did you see that jet? Those are quadruplets. He said she was barren." Simone heard none of it, or if she did, she showed no sign. She kept walking with perfect composure, not looking directly at Devon, not acknowledging the chaos her presence had created. She reached the third row and gracefully took her seat, settling Zara beside her. The nannies arranged themselves in the row behind her with the other 3 children, a perfectly orchestrated tableau of maternal success. She smoothed her dress, crossed her ankles elegantly, and folded her hands in her lap. Only then did she allow herself to look forward, meeting no one's eyes but making her presence absolutely undeniable. Zion pointed at the flowers. "Pretty, Mama." "Yes, baby," Simone replied softly. "Very pretty." The whispers grew louder. Guests were pulling out phones, texting furiously, some trying to discreetly take photos. Social media posts were already being drafted in real time. "You won't believe what just happened at the Hartfield wedding." At the altar, the officiant cleared his throat awkwardly, looking between Devon's frozen face and the restless crowd. Shall we continue?" he asked uncertainly. Vanessa touched Devon's arm, her grip tight enough to hurt. "Devon, the ceremony. We need to start." Devon blinked, as if waking from a nightmare, except the nightmare was still there. Sitting in the third row with 4 children who should not exist, he forced himself to turn back to face the officiant, but his hands were shaking visibly now. The officiant, a seasoned professional who had presided over hundreds of weddings, had never experienced anything quite like this. The tension in the air was thick enough to cut. Every guest was still watching Simone, rather than the altar. The whispers showed no sign of stopping. "Dearly beloved," he began, his voice cracking slightly, "we are gathered here today." But nobody was listening. All eyes remained on the woman in emerald, the 4 beautiful children, and the impossible truth they represented. Devon's carefully orchestrated humiliation had just become his own unraveling, and the ceremony had only just begun. The officiant's words floated through the air like meaningless sounds. Devon stood at the altar, his body facing forward, but his awareness completely fractured. He could feel Simone's presence behind him like heat from a fire, impossible to ignore. His mind raced through calculations that didn't add up. 2 years since the divorce. Quadruplets who looked about 18 months old. The timeline fit perfectly, which meant she had gotten pregnant almost immediately after leaving him. "Do you, Devon Hartfield, take Vanessa Laurent to be your lawfully wedded wife?" the officiant asked. Devon's mouth opened, but the words stuck in his throat. He coughed, tried again. Yes, I do." His voice came out weak, strangled. Several guests exchanged glances. This was not the confident, commanding Devon Hartfield they knew. Vanessa's smile was frozen on her face, her eyes darting between Devon and the guests who were still whispering about the woman in the third row. She had worked for months planning this wedding, had envisioned it as her entrance into a new stratosphere of wealth and influence. Now it felt like the ground was shifting beneath her feet. "And do you, Vanessa Laurent, take Devon Hartfield to be your lawfully wedded husband?" "I do," Vanessa said, her voice strong despite her confusion. The officiant looked relieved to reach the end. "Then, by the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride." Devon leaned in mechanically, kissing Vanessa with none of the passion such a moment should hold. The guests applauded, but it was scattered, distracted. Half of them were still sneaking glances at Simone, who sat with perfect composure, gently bouncing Zara on her knee. "Ladies and gentlemen," the officiant announced, "I present to you Mr. and Mrs. Devon Hartfield." The recessional music began. Devon and Vanessa walked back down the aisle, but the traditional joy of the moment was completely absent. Devon's eyes found Simone as he passed her row. Their gazes locked for a fraction of a second. Hers was calm, almost pitying. His was full of questions he couldn't ask, panic he couldn't express. The cocktail hour began immediately after the ceremony. Guests moved toward the reception pavilion where champagne fountains and elaborate appetizer stations waited. But the conversations weren't about the beautiful venue or the stunning bride. Every cluster of guests was discussing one thing. "Did you see those children?" 4 of them. Quadruplets. "I heard Devon say she was infertile. That's why they divorced." Well, clearly someone was lying. That dress she wore probably cost more than my car. And arriving by private jet. Who is she now? Simone remained in her seat for a moment after most guests had moved to the reception area. She adjusted Layla's dress, wiped a smudge from Levi's cheek, and straightened Zion's little tie. The nannies waited patiently, professional and unobtrusive. "Mama, juice?" Layla asked. "Soon, baby," Simone promised. "We'll get you all some juice very soon." She stood, gathering Zara into her arms while the nannies took the other 3 children. As she walked toward the reception pavilion, she could feel every eye on her. Business associates of Devon's who she remembered from years ago, society women who had once looked down on her, tech executives who had attended dinners at the penthouse when she was still Mrs. Hartfield. The reception space was even more elaborate than the ceremony area. Round tables draped in silk, centerpieces of white roses and orchids, a band setting up on a stage at one end. Simone found her assigned table and settled the children with the help of her nannies. She had brought snacks and quiet toys, prepared for the reality of managing 4 toddlers in a formal setting. Devon stood near the bar with Vanessa, who was interrogating him in hushed, urgent tones. Even from across the room, Simone could see the tension in his shoulders, the way he kept glancing in her direction. Business associates began approaching Devon with questions poorly disguised as congratulations. "Beautiful ceremony, Devon," said James Crawford, the CEO of a competing tech firm. "I didn't realize your ex-wife had moved on so successfully." "Neither did I," Devon said through gritted teeth. "Those children," another man added. "Quite a surprise. I thought—" "I don't want to discuss it," Devon cut him off. But the questions kept coming, each one a small knife twisting in his carefully constructed narrative. If Simone could have children, and clearly she could, then what did that say about him? The implication hung in the air, unspoken but unmistakable. Across the room, Patricia Hartfield sat frozen at her table, a glass of champagne untouched before her. She was watching Simone with an expression that mixed horror with something else. Guilt, perhaps, or fear. The truth she had helped bury was walking around in an emerald dress with 4 pieces of living evidence. She stood abruptly, her chair scraping loudly. Conversations nearby paused as Patricia crossed the pavilion, her heels clicking with determination. Guests parted for her, sensing drama about to unfold. Simone saw her coming. For a moment, her composure wavered. This woman had called her defective, had pressured Devon to divorce her, had made 8 years of marriage a living hell. But Simone straightened her spine and met Patricia's approach with quiet dignity. Patricia stopped at Simone's table, looking down at the 4 children with an expression of pure shock. Zara looked up at her grandmother curiously. Zion watched with his thoughtful gaze. Layla smiled, always friendly. Levi simply observed. "Simone," Patricia said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Mrs. Hartfield," Simone replied calmly. For a long moment, they simply looked at each other. Then, to everyone's surprise, Patricia's eyes filled with tears. Her face crumpled, years of certainty collapsing into doubt. "I always knew," Patricia said, loud enough for nearby tables to hear. Her voice shook. "I saw his medical files years ago, when he was applying for life insurance. The doctors said his numbers were extremely low, almost zero chance of natural conception." The tables around them went silent. Phones came out, recording this moment. "I saw the files," Patricia continued, tears now streaming down her carefully made-up face. "But I couldn't. He's my son. I couldn't admit that he was the problem. So I let him blame you. I helped him blame you. And I have regretted it every single day since." She reached out as if to touch Simone's arm, but Simone pulled back slightly. Patricia's hand fell to her side. "These children," Patricia whispered, looking at the quadruplets. "They're beautiful. They're perfect. And you deserve to have them with my son, but he was too proud, and I was too much of a coward to tell him the truth." The whispered conversations exploded into open discussion. Guests at neighboring tables leaned in, passing the information like wildfire. Devin knew. His own mother is saying he lied. He blamed her for his own infertility. Devin, who had been watching this interaction from across the room, suddenly moved. He strode toward Simone's table, his face red with rage and humiliation. "Mother, what are you doing?" he hissed, grabbing Patricia's arm. Patricia pulled away from him. "I'm telling the truth, Devin. Something I should have done years ago." Devin's attention snapped to Simone. "You need to leave," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "This is inappropriate. You're disrupting my wedding." Simone looked up at him calmly, her children arranged around her like a protective shield. When she spoke, her voice was quiet but carried clearly in the suddenly silent pavilion. "I'm not the one who should be ashamed, Devin." She stood slowly, facing him directly. Years of pain and humiliation crystallized into this moment of absolute clarity. "You blamed me for your inadequacy. You made me believe I was worthless. You threw me away like garbage, made me sign away everything, left me with nothing but a suitcase and a broken heart. You told everyone I was the problem, that I was barren, that I was defective." Her voice remained calm, but her words cut like surgical instruments, precise and devastating. "These children," she gestured to Zara, Zion, Layla, and Levi, "are my proof that I was never the problem. You were. You knew it, your mother knew it, and you lied to everyone, including yourself, rather than face the truth." The surrounding guests had gone completely silent. Phones were openly recording now. This moment would be all over social media within the hour. Devin's face went from red to purple. "You have no right." "I have every right," Simone interrupted, her voice still eerily calm. "I spent 8 years being destroyed by your lies. I have earned the right to speak my truth." Vanessa, who had been standing frozen near the bar, suddenly moved forward. Her face had gone pale, one hand instinctively moving to her stomach in a gesture she immediately tried to hide. "Devin," she said, her voice tight, "we need to talk. Now!" A guest at a nearby table, emboldened by the drama, called out, "If Devin can't have children naturally, then how is Vanessa?" The sentence hung unfinished in the air, but everyone understood the implication. Vanessa's hand pressed harder against her stomach. She was 3 months pregnant, a fact only a few people knew. But if Devin couldn't father children naturally, then whose baby was she carrying? Devon's eyes widened with panic as he realized what everyone was thinking. "Vanessa, not here. Please." But Vanessa was done with secrets. Her perfect wedding had dissolved into chaos, and she wanted answers. "You told me the baby was yours," she said, her voice rising. "You said we made this baby together. But if what your mother is saying is true—" "Vanessa, I can explain," Devon said desperately, reaching for her. She stepped back, her beautiful face twisted with betrayal. "Explain what? That you lied to me? That you used donor material without telling me? That you let me believe we created this child together when you knew you couldn't?" The crowd had grown completely silent, a theater audience watching a tragedy unfold. "I wanted to give you what you wanted," Devon said, his voice breaking. "I wanted to be the man you thought I was." "By lying?" Vanessa's voice cracked. "By building our entire relationship on deception?" She looked down at her engagement ring, the massive diamond catching the light. With shaking hands, she pulled it off and threw it at Devon's feet. The ring bounced once on the polished floor, the sound impossibly loud in the silent pavilion. "This wedding is over," Vanessa said. "This marriage is over before it even started." She turned and walked away, her wedding dress trailing behind her like a white flag of surrender. Several guests stood and followed her, murmuring sympathetically. Then more guests stood, collecting their belongings, clearly uncomfortable with the drama unfolding. Devon stood frozen, watching his bride walk away, his mother crying, his guests leaving, his carefully constructed life collapsing like a house of cards. Simone gathered her children, nodding to the nannies. It was time to leave. As she moved toward the exit, she had to pass Devon, who stood alone in the center of the pavilion that had been meant for his triumph. She paused beside him, close enough that only he could hear her words. "I hope you find peace, Devon," she said softly. "I already have mine." Then she walked away, her children in her wake, her head held high. Behind her, she could hear Devon's breathing, ragged and broken. She didn't look back. Simone walked through the pavilion with measured steps, her children surrounding her like a protective constellation. Guests parted to let her pass, some with expressions of sympathy, others with barely concealed admiration. The whispers followed her like a wake. "Did you see his face?" She handled that with such grace. Meanwhile, he's destroyed his own wedding. Simone reached the exit and paused, taking one last look at the elaborate reception that would never happen. Untouched champagne fountains, perfectly arranged tables, a wedding cake that would never be cut. Devon's empire of lies, displayed in buttercream and silk. "Mrs. Cross," one of the nannies said gently. "The cars are ready." Simone nodded, turning away from the ruins of Devon's perfect day. But before she could leave, a commotion erupted behind her. Vanessa had stopped halfway across the lawn, turning back toward the pavilion. Her wedding dress was gathered in her fists, her face streaked with ruined makeup. Devon had followed her, desperate and pleading. "Vanessa, please," Devon called out, his voice carrying across the space. "Let me explain everything. We can fix this." Vanessa stopped, her whole body rigid with fury. When she turned to face him, her voice was loud enough for everyone still in the pavilion to hear. "Fix this?" she repeated, her laugh bitter and sharp. "How exactly do you fix years of lies, Devon? How do you fix the fact that our entire relationship was built on deception?" Devon reached for her, but she stepped back. "I love you," he said desperately. "The baby is ours, Vanessa. I used donor material, yes, but I did it for us, for our future." "Without telling me," Vanessa shot back. "Without giving me a choice. You let me believe we created this life together naturally. You knew I wanted that, and you lied straight to my face." Guests were openly watching now, the remaining crowd transfixed by the unfolding drama. Simone knew she should leave, but something kept her rooted to the spot. Perhaps she needed to see this through to the end, to witness the complete collapse of the narrative that had defined her pain for so long. "I was protecting you," Devon said, his voice breaking. "I was protecting us. If people knew I couldn't—" "Protect me?" Vanessa's voice rose to a near shout. "You were protecting yourself, your ego, your image, your precious reputation, just like you did with her." She pointed toward Simone, who stood at the edge of the scene. "You destroyed that woman's life to protect your pride, and you were doing the same thing to me." Devon's face crumpled. For the first time since Simone had known him, he looked truly broken. Not angry, not proud, but completely shattered. "I couldn't admit it," he whispered. "I couldn't be the man who failed. My father built an empire. My mother expected greatness. How could I tell them that I couldn't even do the most basic thing a man is supposed to do?" "So you blamed an innocent woman instead?" Vanessa said, her voice cold now. "You let everyone believe she was defective when you knew the truth? Devon, that's not just lying. That's cruelty. That's evil." Devon's legs seemed to give out. He sank to his knees on the perfectly manicured lawn, his expensive suit crumpling. "I'm sorry," he said, but it wasn't clear who he was apologizing to. "I'm so sorry." Vanessa looked down at him with something between pity and disgust. "I'm 3 months pregnant with a baby I thought was ours. Now I find out it's not. Not really. You've taken away my right to make informed choices about my own body, my own child. That's unforgivable." She pulled off her veil, letting it fall to the ground. "I'm leaving. Don't contact me. My lawyers will be in touch." This time, when she walked away, she didn't stop. Several of her bridesmaids rushed to join her, shooting accusatory glances at Devon as they passed. More guests followed, the wedding party dissolving like sugar in rain. Patricia Hartfield moved toward her son, her own face wet with tears. "Devon, get up," she said quietly. "You're making a scene." "I've already made a scene, Mother," Devon said, his voice hollow. "I've made a scene of my entire life." Patricia knelt beside him, her designer suit be damned. "I should have told you the truth years ago. I should have made you face it instead of letting you destroy that girl's life. This is my fault, too." "It's my fault," Devon said. "All of it. Every cruel word, every lie, every moment of pain I caused Simone. It was all my fault, and I knew it. I always knew it." Simone felt a hand on her arm. Elijah had appeared beside her, having emerged from where he'd been waiting with the staff. "Come on," he said gently. "This isn't your burden anymore. Let's go home." But Simone pulled away gently. There was something she needed to do, a final act of closure that she hadn't planned, but now felt necessary. She walked back toward Devon, who still knelt on the lawn. Patricia saw her coming and stood, stepping aside. Simone stopped a few feet away, looking down at the man who had once had the power to destroy her. "Devon," she said quietly. He looked up, his eyes red and swollen. "Simone, I don't know what to say. I'm sorry, doesn't even begin." "You're right," Simone interrupted. "It doesn't. Sorry doesn't give me back 8 years. Sorry doesn't erase the nights I cried myself to sleep believing I was broken. Sorry doesn't heal the damage you did to my sense of self-worth." Devon's face crumpled further. I know, and I have to live with that." "Yes, you do," Simone said. "But I don't. I don't have to carry your guilt or your shame or your lies anymore. I came here today thinking I needed you to see what you'd lost. But I realize now that's not quite right. I needed to see that you never had me in the first place. She gestured to where Elijah stood with the children. That man there, he sees me. He values me. He loves me for who I am, not for what I can give him or how I make him look. Those children are mine, born from love and honesty, not from lies and obligation. You didn't lose me, Devon. You never had the real me. You had a version of me that I twisted myself into trying to please you. That woman is gone. Devon bowed his head. I see that now. I see what real strength looks like. And it's not what I thought. It's not pride or power or control. It's what you're showing right now. I'm not showing you anything, Simone said, her voice gentle but firm. I'm living my truth, and you just happened to witness it. That's all this was ever about. Not revenge, not vindication, just truth. She looked at Patricia, who stood watching with tears streaming down her face. Mrs. Hartfield, thank you for finally being honest. I know that took courage. Patricia covered her mouth, sobbing. I'm so sorry, Simone. You deserved so much better. From all of us. Simone nodded, accepting the apology without absolving the sin. Some things were too big for simple forgiveness, but acknowledgement was a start. She turned back to Devon one last time. I hope you get help, Devon. Real help. Not just for fertility issues, but for whatever made you think it was okay to destroy someone else to protect yourself. I hope you learn to be honest, starting with yourself. I will, Devon said hoarsely. I promise. Don't promise me, Simone said. Promise yourself. And more importantly, keep it. She walked back to Elijah and her children, feeling lighter with each step. The weight she'd carried for years was finally lifting, not because Devon had apologized, but because she had spoken her truth and walked away from his chaos. Ready? Elijah asked, his eyes searching hers. More than ready, Simone replied, taking his hand. They walked to the convoy of vehicles, the nannies efficiently loading the children. Zara reached for Simone from her car seat. Home, Mama? Yes, baby, Simone said, kissing her daughter's forehead. We're going home. As they drove away from Riverside Gardens estate, Simone looked back one last time through the rear window. She could see the pavilion in the distance, guests scattered across the lawn, the white tents that had promised celebration now housing only disappointment and broken promises. Devon sat alone on the grass, his mother beside him, both of them small figures growing smaller as distance increased. The scene looked almost tragic, but Simone felt no satisfaction in his downfall, only relief that it was no longer her story. How do you feel? Elijah asked as they drove. Simone thought about the question. How did she feel? Not triumphant, though she had certainly proven her point. Not vengeful, though Devon's perfect day had collapsed spectacularly. Not even particularly sad, though the scene had been painful to witness. Free, she finally said. I feel free. In the vehicle ahead, she could see her children through the window. Zion was talking animatedly to his nanny. Layla was singing to herself. Levi had already fallen asleep. They were her proof, yes, but more than that, they were her joy, her purpose, her future. The jet waited at the airfield, ready to carry them home. As they boarded, Simone took one last look at the city where Devon lived, where her old life had died, where she had once believed herself to be worthless. Goodbye, she whispered, not to Devon specifically, but to all of it. The pain, the shame, the lies. All of it stayed behind as the jet lifted into the sky. 6 months later, Simone sat at her desk in her expanded office, reviewing contracts for 3 major events scheduled for the next quarter. Her business had exploded after the wedding, not because of the drama, though that had certainly raised her profile. but because she was genuinely excellent at what she did. On her desk sat a framed photo from that day, her in the emerald dress, surrounded by her 4 children and Elijah, all of them smiling. Not the forced smile of someone proving a point, but the genuine joy of a family that had found peace. She had heard through mutual acquaintances that Devon had sold Hartfield Technologies and entered therapy. Vanessa had her baby, a girl, and was reportedly happy as a single mother. Patricia had reached out once with a longer apology, which Simone had accepted graciously but kept at arm's length. Some relationships, once broken, couldn't be fully mended, and that was okay. Keisha burst into the office without knocking, as was her way. "Girl, you will not believe what just came across my desk." "What?" Simone asked, amused by her friend's dramatics. "Forbes," Keisha said, waving her phone. "They're doing a feature on women entrepreneurs who overcame adversity. And guess who they want to interview?" Simone raised an eyebrow. "Please tell me you're joking." "Dead serious," Keisha grinned. "They specifically mentioned how you rebuilt your business after divorce and are now one of the top event planners in the region. Plus, they love the Quadruplets angle. From broken to blessed, or something like that." Simone laughed, shaking her head. "That's incredibly cheesy." "But accurate," Keisha pointed out. "So, are you going to do it?" Simone thought about it. A year ago, she would have refused, not wanting to expose her pain to public scrutiny. But now? Now she had a story that might help someone else who felt broken, who believed the lies told about them, who needed to know that survival was possible. "Yes," she said, "I'll do it." That evening, as she tucked her children into bed, Simone reflected on how far she had traveled. From the woman who left Devon's penthouse with nothing but a suitcase, to the woman who had built an empire of her own. Not of wealth and power like Devon had valued, but of love, honesty, and genuine success. "Mama," Zara said sleepily, "tell story." Simone smiled, settling onto the edge of the bed. "Once upon a time," she began, "there was a woman who everyone told was broken, but she wasn't broken at all. She was just waiting to find the right place to grow." As her children drifted to sleep, Simone sat in the peaceful darkness of their room, listening to their gentle breathing. 4 miracles, 4 declarations of truth, 4 reasons why she had survived. She thought about Devon occasionally, but with distance rather than emotion. He was a chapter in her story, an important one that had shaped her, but not the whole book. Not even close. The real story was this: the quiet evenings with Elijah, the chaos of managing 4 toddlers, the satisfaction of planning perfect events for grateful clients, the deep friendships that had sustained her, and the unshakable knowledge of her own worth. Some people spend their lives trying to break you, she thought, repeating the words that had become her mantra. The real victory is building yourself back better than they ever imagined. And she had. Against all odds, against all the cruelty and lies, against even her own doubts, Simone had built a life of extraordinary beauty. That was her reckoning. Not Devon's downfall, but her own rise. Not his punishment, but her own peace. And it was more than enough. Thank you for staying with me until the very end of this incredible journey. If this story touched your heart, wait until you see what's coming next. It's even more powerful and inspiring than you can imagine. So don't go anywhere. Click on that video showing on your screen right now to dive into another amazing story that will absolutely blow your mind. Trust me, you won't regret it.